You can't sit down. Not really. Even when you're resting, a low hum of anxiety runs beneath everything. A quiet voice asks, "What should I be doing right now? Who needs something?" You check your phone. You think about tomorrow's tasks. You half watch the show while mentally composing that email, because stopping feels like disappearing. And if you're not useful, what are you? This is about the people who tie their worth to their usefulness. The ones who can't say no without a wave of guilt crashing over them. The ones who feel safer being needed than being wanted. The ones who measure their value by how much they give, how much they do, how indispensable they can become. It's not about being helpful, it's about needing to be helpful to feel like you matter. There's a difference. And if you've ever felt that sinking feeling when someone says, "Don't worry about it," or "I'll handle it myself," you know exactly what I'm talking about. Here's what it feels like from the inside. You wake up with a mental checklist already forming. Not the fun kind, the kind that proves you deserve to take up space today. When someone asks for help, you feel a strange relief. Because now you have a reason to exist in their world. Now you're not just there. You're useful. When you're not needed, there's a hollow feeling, like you're waiting in the wings for a cue that never comes. You say yes when you want to say no, because saying no feels like slamming a door in someone's face. It feels like choosing yourself over them. And choosing yourself feels selfish, reckless even. Rest doesn't feel like rest. It feels like falling behind. You can't receive help easily. When someone offers, your first instinct is to downplay what you need or refuse entirely. Because being on the receiving end makes you feel exposed, vulnerable, like you're in debt. And debt means you're the burden you've the pound you've been terrified of becoming. It shows up in specific moments. You finish a project, and instead of feeling proud, you feel empty. The doing is over, and now you're back to just you. And you're not sure that's enough. Someone thanks you, and you deflect immediately. Oh, it was nothing. If it was nothing, they won't feel like they owe you. And you need them to stay, not out of obligation, but because you were so useful they can't imagine life without you. You're in a conversation, and you're scanning for problems to solve. Not because you're nosy, because that's how you know how to connect. You don't know how to just be with someone without a role to play. You get sick or burned out, and you feel shame. Not because you need rest, because you can't perform. And if you can't perform, you're wasting everyone's time. A friend says, "I miss you, let's just hang out." And you feel a flash of panic. What do you bring to the table if there's no table? What do you offer when there's nothing to fix, no role to fill, no task to complete? This doesn't come from nowhere. Most of the time, it starts early. Maybe you grew up in a house where love felt conditional, not because anyone said it out loud, but because you noticed. You got attention when you helped. You got praised when you achieved. You got validation when you made life easier for someone else. And you learned being good isn't enough. You have to be useful. Or maybe you grew up watching someone you love struggle, and helping them became your identity. You became the responsible one, the one who stepped up. And it felt good to be needed, because it gave you control in a situation that felt chaotic. Maybe you were overlooked as a kid, and you figured out that the squeaky wheel gets the grease but the helpful wheel gets kept. So you made yourself indispensable. Or maybe someone important to you left, and you internalized it as, "They left because I didn't give enough. I wasn't valuable enough to stay." So you started overcompensating. You made sure no one could ever leave you because you were too useful to lose. Here's why it doesn't go away on its own. Because it works, at least in the short term. People appreciate you, you get positive feedback, you're reliable, capable, the person people turn to. And that feels like proof you're doing it right. But underneath, you're running on a treadmill. Because the appreciation doesn't fill the hole, it only covers it temporarily. You're not afraid of hard work. You're afraid that without it, you're not worth keeping around. So you stay busy. You stay useful. You are needed. And the thought of stopping feels like testing a bridge you're not sure will hold your weight. What if you rest and people forget about you? What if you say no and they find someone else? What if you stop being useful and they realize you were valuable only for what you could do, not who you are? Fear isn't irrational. It's based on a belief you've been collecting evidence for your entire life. I am what I do, not who I am. Here's what it costs you. You're exhausted, not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, the kind that lives in your bones. You've built relationships where you're the giver, and it's starting to feel one-sided. Not because people are using you, but because you never let them give back. You've trained them to see you as the capable one who doesn't need anything. You sometimes reason people, even though you said yes. Part of you wanted them to notice you were stretched thin. You wanted them to insist you rest. But they didn't, and now you're silently angry at them for something they didn't know they were supposed to do. You don't know who you are outside your roles. Without the tasks, the responsibilities, the usefulness, there's a blank space. And that blank space terrifies you. You can't accept love that isn't earned. Compliments about who you are, not what you do, bounce off. They don't compute, because you don't believe you're worth loving just for existing. And the cruelest part, you're so busy being useful that you've forgotten how to need people. And connection isn't built on usefulness. It's built on vulnerability. But vulnerability feels like a luxury you can't afford. The trap is this. You think you're afraid of being useless. But what you're really afraid of is being unwanted. Usefulness is measurable. It's concrete. You can point to it and say, see, I matter. But being wanted for who you are, that's subjective. It's abstract. It requires trusting that you're enough without proof. And trust is terrifying when you've spent your whole life collecting evidence that you're not. So you stay in the cycle. You say yes, you help, you give, you prove. And the bar keeps rising. Because no amount of usefulness will ever silence the fear that you're not inherently worth keeping. Change doesn't mean stop helping people. It means separating your worth from your utility. It starts with noticing the pattern, catching that reflex to say yes before you've even thought about it, noticing the guilt when you rest, noticing the panic when you're not needed. You start small. You say no to one thing, not because you're being selfish, but because you're testing whether the relationship can hold it. And here's what you learn. The people who matter don't leave, they adjust. Ones who only valued your usefulness might drift, and that will hurt. But it also tells you the truth. And the truth, even when it stings, is better than performing for breadcrumbs. You practice receiving. You let someone help you, even when every cell in your body wants to say, I'm fine. You sit with the discomfort of not doing anything. You rest without earning it first. And you notice that the world doesn't collapse. You start to separate who you are from what you do. You learn that you can be valuable and still say no. You can rest and still matter. You can need help and still be strong. You stop performing your worth and start believing it. And slowly, you build a life where you're not just needed. You're wanted, not for what you do, for who you are. The shift happens when you realize this. Being useful is beautiful when it comes from overflow, not obligation. When you help because you want to, not because you're terrified of what will happen if you don't. When you give because you're full, not because you're trying to fill yourself with someone else's gratitude. When you rest because you're human, not because you've finally earned it. You stop being the person who's always available and start being the person who's present when you're there. And presence, real presence, is worth more than all the usefulness in the world. You are not a tool. You're not here to justify your existence by how much you produce or how many people you help. You matter because you're here, not because of what you bring to the table, but because you're sitting at it. The people who love you don't need you to earn it every day. They're not keeping a tally. They're not waiting for you to slip up so they can leave. And if they are, they're not your people. Your worth is not up for debate. It's not performance-based. It doesn't expire when you rest. You are enough, right now, as you are, even when you're not doing anything at all. So here's my question for you. If you stopped proving your worth for a week, what would you be afraid would happen? Think about that. And if this hit home, subscribe. There's more where this came from. See you there.